Hello, welcome to today's video. I could have given this video a lot of different titles because we're going to cover a lot of simple ground in order to show some of the ways that Alteryx can make your life easier while you're developing advanced metrics, or in this case complex metrics. And with complex metrics, sometimes you have to deal with a lot of data and joining data in a complex fashion in order to sort out and to categorize the information to generate the metrics. And so I'm going to take a normal workflow example and also show how it would work as an in-database example using the MySQL. That being said, the data that we're going to look at in this example has to do with our puppies that are performing, as well as a brand new puppy training program that has been started. And our marketing department wants to figure out which puppies are performing, which puppies are training, and how they can reach out and get more puppies performing and getting more puppies trained. So knowing how often the puppies might be training and when they're training as opposed to when the performance are makes sense to them, and so they needed a data set to do that with. And so we wanted to look at joining these two pieces of data. And since what they're interested in is whether or not puppies have trained before performing or after performing, or not training at all, and so we need to bring these two data sets together. Now, in bringing two data sets like this together, where you have multiple instances of data that match each other, you're getting what I would call a controlled product join. And in a controlled product join, you have to be careful with how many records you're generating because it's not a one-to-one relationship. For every puppy that's performing, they have multiple performances, as well as puppies that are training, they have multiple training sessions as well. And so joining them together becomes a many-to-many join or a product join. Now in my data set it's very small. As you can see here, there's not that many records, it's thousands. But what I've done is brought in from the training the date that they trained and an indicator whether they attended or not. So very quickly I wanted to bring in a filter that if they didn't actually attend training, we don't want them in this data set. And so we are also going to be using filters to make our life easier through our formulas as well. Just because no one likes to write complex formulas, let Alteryx do the work for you. It doesn't really cost you anything. So now in this data set, as you've noticed, I've cached this data so it can run very quickly locally. Once I bring it in out of my MySQL database, we can see that these are just all the puppies that have trained. So now we want to join these records together, and that's pretty straightforward as well. So we bring our join in here to puppies that have performed and the puppies that have trained. And this being a little bit more complex join, it has to do with the puppy and the trick. So we wanted to go ahead and join the puppies with the tricks that they performed and the tricks that they've trained on. And when I do this, again, this is a many-to-many join. And so to a degree it becomes a bit of a little puppy product table. And I have three sides of this, which is the left side, which are puppies that performed but did not train, and the join itself, which is the puppies that performed and trained. Both sides of this data are what the marketing department wanted to see. Now, given this is a product join, what you come out with here obviously is a lot of records. It's not that many because again my data set is small. So the question always becomes if this data set is far too big to bring down and join within Alteryx, just takes too long. It's never going to be too big. It's just how long you would like to wait. Why can't I use the power of the database RDBMS, and in my case the MySQL database, in order to bring these two tables together in the product join, because theoretically I could end up with hundreds of thousands of records, and bringing them down after having joined them is much more to the point than bringing them down unjoined. And the answer is yes, quite easy to do that, and the exact same thing can be done but with a few more steps. So we will again bring these in here one at a time. And what I'm going to use is I'm going to be using the in-database structures so that this actual join will be done up on the database as opposed to in my work stream. So I create my in-database connection going to MySQL for my puppy performance and my puppy training. I put a filter on here. Keep in mind that this filter is indeed a SQL filter and not the Alteryx filter. So that's what it looks like this. Once I've done that, then simply all I need to do is within the database in DB, I will join these two sets together. And I'll be joining them on puppy and trick. Down here now I get to choose the type of join that I want to do, and since this is a database join, I don't get to look at all the pieces that come out, but simply I choose one. In this case, I obviously want the left outer join. And again, as I am building this as an NDB structure, I really don't have a chance to do any pre-work because I really want to see data is being done. So I need to select off just those attributes after the join that I want to see. As you can see, there's a lot of attributes here. I don't need all of them, or most of them actually. So I will go ahead and say select deselect all. So I can just get in here. I need my puppy, I need my trick, I need my performance date, and we're going to be using a little bit of a cheat because the performance date and the training date WID, which are down here. As I try to find that, there it is. These are actually a smart key, so I'm going to be using that to my benefit. And so that's really all I need to generate the metrics as far as which puppies were trained before and after they did their tricks. So now once this runs, this is going to generate a SQL statement. I need to bring that data down locally, and I do that with the data stream out. And just for the sake of where we are right here, let's go ahead and drop a browse on the end of this, because you notice the connectors are all blue for in-database. So I connect all in-database widgets together through the blue connectors. But the data stream out, which has no configuration available to it, except for sorting, and I don't typically sort the data coming out because it really doesn't matter at this point. I'd rather use Alteryx's sort. And the data stream out has both the in-database connector leading into it, but it has the workflow, the in-workflow normal green connector, which means it can go back into the local process. So we can run this very quickly. And you can see, if you were actually just paying attention, it is a lot faster because it's a very simple query to generate the SQL, but then the database engine does that join and returns the records to me. We can check real quickly, 7535 here, coming back at this end, and we'd have to do the math to go ahead and generate how many are here, but real quickly look at the last of that. It is a 5, so it actually adds up if you're wondering. So the next step that we will need to do is to go ahead and to begin to generate our metrics. We're going to categorize the data. We're going to put them into indicators so that they can be easily summed and added. And we're going to be using some of the filter to do that separation for us. So let's get started in separating out our data and going ahead and calculating our metrics that will be turned over to the marketing department. It helps to know what metrics we're going to be generating before we actually go about doing it. If you look at the combined sets of these two data sets when they're joined together, you'll notice that there is a lot of metrics that you can mine out of this very simple piece of data, especially from a marketing standpoint. When is the last time people trained? How often do they train? Who's their favorite trainer? What tricks do they perform most often? Do they train for the tricks that they perform or otherwise? Again, there's a lot you can see from this very simple set of data. But what we want to look at is just basically 4 pieces of data that our marketing department asked for, and they want to know which puppies performed without training, because that's always a great place to start. They want to know the number of training sessions that puppies attended before performing, so they can do some averagings and see how things are going. They also want to know that whether puppies actually trained after a performance or they stopped training. And they also want to know what puppies that are trained that hadn't performed yet. It's a great place to get some of the puppies involved in some of the performance activities, and again, another revenue stream for the Daisy Hill Puppy Farm. So if we want to look at that, what it is that we are going to do, well, let's go back to our Alteryx again, and we'll go back to our in workflow piece of work. And because we have all 3 pieces of this data just sitting here waiting for us, so to speak. So essentially what we look at here is that on the left of this join, these are the puppies that performed but did not train. And down here on the right are those puppies that trained but did not perform. It's nice that Alteryx's join widget actually breaks your data out into pieces so you can process them individually. And in the middle, these are the puppies that both performed and trained. And what we want to do there is figure out which ones trained before, which ones trained afterwards. And then again, these are individual records, and it's every join between every training and every performance. So we're going to drop a couple of things in here just to look at what we're doing. Very easily, we have a simple, very simple formula up here at the top. And that's going to be the puppies that had no training. And what we're going to do is simply set indicators, because this will be able to then anoint the categories of the training sessions, do summarizations and things. So they did not have a pre-performance, they did not have a post-performance, they did indeed have a performance, but they did not have an training. And so we set those each individual indicator so we can do mins and maxes if we need to, and we can do the summarizations as well. Likewise, something very simple to do is look down here at the bottom. And if we go ahead and drop this in here and drag this over, you'll see that what we have here is the puppies that had no performance. And so what we do is we set the indicators to match that as well. And basically here saying that they had a training, but they did not have a performance. So what do we do in the middle? Oh, this doesn't actually go there. My bad. In case you're following along, get confused. There was separation. Drop it here. Alteryx does like to auto-match some of your workflows, and if you don't pay attention, it links it to the wrong place. But in the beginning, we have those puppies that are both trained and performed, and we want to break these out and determine which ones of the training sessions were pre-performance and which ones were post. And so we can do that with a complex formula. I myself don't like creating complex formulas. I like to do some other things to work with. And so what I'm going to look at here doing is actually using the filter to go ahead and do the differentiation for me. And I'll drop this right here as well. So bringing the join down there so we can do a very simple calculation that if the training date is less than or equal to performance date, then they were pre-training. And if they're pre-training, we just set our pre-performance training indicator to positive and our post-performance training to 0. And we just do the opposite here. Again, you could do this with a complex for you with an if then else. I just find it easier to separate the data out and then set the indicators the way I need to. Once we've done all of this, all that we need to do now is to bring this data together. Do a little bit of alignment up here so the lines look better for you. We want to drop in a summarize. And we'll drop that here at the, oops, sorry, we got to do a union first. We got to bring the data together before we summarize it. So let's drop our union in up here. It's very simple to drag in a union. We drag all 4 of our data flows back together again. So now we have one combined set of data that we can now run into our summary to go ahead and calculate the metrics at a puppy and trick level. And to do that, it's very easy. We just simply go into puppy and do a group by, go into trick, do a group by. We want to know those that were that performed, and so we look at the performance indicator down here, and all that we want to do there is it's a 1 if they did and a 0 if they didn't. And when summarizing this, all we have to do is take a look at the max, which means if they trained, one of these records will have a 1 in it. Excuse me, if they performed, one will have the record in it. And again, just keeping with editing, that's going to be the performance indicator when we summarize the data out. Likewise, we know if anybody actually trained post-performance. So we have our post-performance training indicator here. We're going to do the same thing, which is a max. Again, the indicator being 0 falls to the bottom. Make my life a little bit easier here. We'll drag this over so I can see what it is I'm trying to edit out of here. There we go. There's our post-performance training indicator. We want to know how many times they trained before, so we take the pre-performance training indicator here, and now we're just going to count up the ones. Excuse me, not count them, summarize them. It adds the ones together. So if they performed before, then they trained before the performance. Each one of those will have a 1 or a 0 indicating that. We summarize those will be the number of times they trained before a performance. And again, this now becomes, rather than an indicator, once we sum it up, it becomes a count. And then finally, we want to know ones that only trained. So we have our training indicator here. So we're going to know if they just had a training session. We'll go ahead and do the same max. Edit it out and change its name to what we want it to see. That's all the data that we need. We would normally store this in the database, but for the sake of this little exercise, we will just go ahead and browse it. We can now run through all of this. Look at our data, and we can see that puppy 1 with trick 2, they did not perform, but they did train. And down here, we had puppy 2 with trick 1. They performed. They did not train after the performance, and in fact, they did not train at all. So if you look through here, we have some randomer sets of data. Puppy 11 with trick 4 performed and trained, and their training was after their performance. So again, this becomes marketing information, and this can be then put into a dashboard and do some further analysis by the marketing department. So what we'll want to do next is to show how we can simply use these same structures in the in-database workflow. We do, however, have one little problem that we have to address first. So if we bring up this workflow, so once we bring the data in, that's where we will be working. But this is the left join, because there's only 2 parts of data coming out of this, and that will be all the data related to performances with the training data hooked into it, but we don't have the right side of this join available to us. So we actually have to go ahead and generate the right side of that join. So we will need to add that ability in here. So making life a little bit easier, again, cutting and pasting. So if I want to do a right outer join, then I need to drag back the same direction. We take the puppy performance from up here down to the left. We take the attended training, which is the true, down to the right. Now we have a right join, and that brings us our data across as well. Run this very quickly. So what we want to do is, from the right outer join standpoint, we just want basically the minus. If you looked at one of my earlier videos, we talked about set operations of doing a minus. We just want to see the puppies that trained but did not perform. So this right outer join will return us both sets of data, both the join intersection of the work and that did not actually have a performance, which are all the nulls. And so to finish up this right side, we need to throw out the join, which is the middle. And we very simply can do that with another filter. And our filter here is going to be the performance state width is null. Recommend that you do this type of filter after the data is returned, because if the filter that we put on the data at the database, it needs to be the database function for is null, which is non-standard across all environments. Now the last thing that we'll want to do is to, in order to be able to just do some cutting and pasting, is go ahead and separate out the left side of this join from the right side. And again, we do that with an is null. So if the training date is null, then that will be the no training side, which is the left side of the Alteryx join. The false will be the join or the middle of the join widget, and the right side or the bottom will be down here. So now we have our same three pieces of data that we had in this workflow. 1, 2, 3, but we had to do with a little bit extra work. But again, you can do it with your database. Data sets large is what you will want to do. Once we've done those three sides, all of this rest of this workflow will be the same because the data is down in our workflow. We don't have to learn anything new. We just hook it all up properly. And if you remember what this looked like, dropping it right here, dragging it over so you can see. Come on down, there you go. So this hooks up to the left side to the no training, the false, which is the middle, will go to our pre-training and post-training analysis. And down here, the right, the true side is just the right side of the join. We drop it into the no performance. Run this through. See, all the widgets work the same because, again, once we've done the actual heavy lifting at the database level, everything else can be done with our normal Alteryx workflow. So use the same ones we did before, and you can see the same results. We have the training only without performance. We have the performance only without training. And if we find number 11 down here somewhere, we can see that we had training with performance, with the training being after the performance. So that shows you how you can use your Alteryx widgets to make your work pretty easy in order to do some type of metric generation from a product join or a complex join capability. And we looked at two ways of doing that. If your data set is small, this is my favorite way of doing it because the Alteryx join is the most powerful. But if we don't and we still need all those pieces, we can do the same thing with the in-database, which is a database SQL join with some filters and having to actually do two different joins of the same data set. And again, this will result in two SQL statements being executed on your RDBMS environment, not one that simply will return two different sets of data, but you'll have two separate SQLs being generated and executed. This group right here being one SQL statement, and then this group down here being the second SQL statement being executed. If you have any questions about how to convert from in-database structures to in workflow structures for your joins or vice versa, drop me a comment, subscribe, and we'll continue on with our metrics generation examples as we try to help our marketing department do some work. Please subscribe. Tell me if you like this or not. Let me know what else you need to see. Have a great day.